In this video, we look at the rise and sudden fall of South Korea's former president, Park Geun-hye. The daughter of a former dictator, she presented herself as a nostalgic icon the Korean people could trust and turn to, and she stayed popular despite a number of corruption scandals. Then it all came tumbling down really quickly, and in a really bizarre way. We will get to it, but first, let me talk about the Asianometry newsletter. If you subscribe to the channel, you should also sign up to the newsletter. Check out videos you might not have seen before, and read writings that I never bothered to turn into a video. You can find the link to the newsletter in the video description below, or you can just go to Asianometry.com. Much thanks. Pak Gyunhee was born the first child of Korea's third president, Pak Gyunhee. In 1961, Pak Gyunhee led a military coup that ended the Second Republic of Korea. Pak had himself elected president of the new Third Republic. The 1960s were a turbulent time in South Korea's history. First Lady Yoo Kyung-soo, and I'm going to really butcher these names all night long, Pak Chung-hee's wife and mother of Pak Gyunhee, was killed in 1974 by a North Korean sympathizer at the Seoul National Theater of Korea. It had been accidental, as the assassin was targeting the president. With her mother's passing, Park Gyunhee filled the role of the nation's first lady. This went on until 1979, when her father, the president, was also assassinated. The assassination of Pak Gyunhee was a significant but mysterious event in Korea's history. He was shot by his longtime friend and own security chief, Kim Jae-gyu. During the trial, Kim said that one of his motives for killing his friend was his frustration over Pak's inaction in curtailing the influence of an associate, Choi Taemin, and his influence over First Lady Pak Gyunhee. Choi Taemin was an associate of Pak Gyunhee. He had been a police officer, a Buddhist monk, and an unofficial civil servant. Throughout the 1960s, he held various roles like the president of the Korean Welfare Association and vice president of the National Buddhist Youth Association. One of Choi's first roles in the government was to promote Pak's New Community campaign. This was an ultra-nationalist movement that raised funds for infrastructure. Ordained as a pastor by the Presbyterian Church of Korea, Choi set up religious organizations to raise money for this campaign, and likely embezzled from them. It was around then that Choi established a relationship with Pak Gyunhee. Per second-hand testimony, after the assassination of the First Lady Yoo Kyung-soo, Choi sent a letter to Pak Gyunhee, then in her early 20s. He claimed to deliver a message from her mother. The former First Lady had appeared in his dream. Yoo had told Choi, "My daughter Gyunhee is foolish, so you should help her." Pak invited him to the Blue House, Korea's presidential home. There, in front of the young First Lady, Choi was possessed by the spirit of Pak's mother. He reproduced her expression and voice. Again, this comes to us secondhand and is really bizarre, but it is hard to deny that there was something going on. Choi was more than a simple grief counselor. After Pak Chung-hee's assassination, his daughter left the public eye. She managed the Yoo Kyung-soo Foundation, established by her mother for children's welfare, and served as chairman of the Korea Cultural Foundation. She also continued her association with Choi Taemin, by then founder and head of the Eternal Life Church. In 1989, the relationship was significant enough that the Korean CIA reported about it to then-President Roh Tae-woo. It was accused that the relationship was used to influence the direction of various memorial and education projects. Other rumors claimed that the two had a physical relationship. When asked about it by a fellow pastor, Choi said, "I'm old. Park Gyunhee and I are a married couple in the spirit world, not a physical couple." Choi Taemin died in 1994. Whatever the true nature of that relationship had been, it passed down from the pastor down to his daughter, Choi SoonSil. After Park's assassination, another military general, Chun Do-hwan, seized power and served as Korea's fifth president throughout most of the 1980s. Despite this, Chun struggled to maintain legitimacy throughout this period of time. First, due to the way he seized power after the Pak assassination, and second, due to his violent suppression of the May 1980 Gwangju uprising. The latter resulted in many deaths. The actual number is uncertain, ranging from 165 to over 2,000. There is a great movie called A Taxi Driver that takes place during this momentous event. It is based on a true story and I highly recommend it. Anyway, Eventually, President Chun handed power over to the sixth president, the aforementioned Roh Tae-woo, a former member of his own administration, after a free and fair election. It would be South Korea's first peaceful transfer of power. But suddenly transitioning to free elections after years of martial law and rigged elections had many repercussions. For one thing, South Korea did not have the time to develop established, national-level political parties. Without that, South Korean presidential politics started off with simple regionalism. Early candidates appealed to their regional strongholds. With multiple opposition candidates, this eventually split the opposition vote and led to Roh, a member of Chun's own party, winning the election. In 1990, Roh's party eventually merged with two others to create a right-wing/center-right megabloc, tied mostly to what had once been the province of Gyeongsang. They faced off against a left-wing bloc that drew most of its electoral energy from the province of Honan. This created something like the two-party system we see in the United States, though with greater influence from random third parties with no chance of winning anything. Over time, this structure stabilized. South Korean voting patterns at this time depended on regions and personal connections, like blood ties, hometown ties, or schooling ties. Internal party politics depended on local cliques and informal connections. Organized around a single candidate personality or region, South Korea's parties thus are vulnerable to illegal funding scandals, like from a chaebol or two, or any other personal scandal, as well as a rise of populist fervor, like from a former president's daughter. Back to Pak Gyunhee. As I mentioned, Pak left the public eye after her father's assassination. She managed private foundations and stayed out of politics. Her relationship with Choi was just her own matter, and that of the foundations she managed. This changed in 1997, 18 years after her father's death. She emerged in the public eye after being elected as an assemblywoman in Daegu, her hometown and Pak Chung-hee's power base. Like Taiwan's relationship with the Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, Pak Chung-hee has a rather complicated legacy in South Korea. On one hand, yes, he acted brutally and suppressed many freedoms. On the other hand, he laid the foundations for Korea's present economic success and wealth. Like I said, it's complicated. Anyway, conservatives in industrial areas like Daegu and the wider South Gyeongsang province loved him, and they would love her too. Nostalgia from 60s-aged elder voters, combined with empathy for Pak Gyunhee's personal tragedies, helped boost her political star. She even experienced a Reagan-like moment of her own during the 2006 elections. A mentally disturbed man attacked her with a knife. The resulting wound required 60 stitches and several hours of surgery. Her first words upon waking up was, "How is Daejeon?" a reference to South Korea's fifth largest city. She eventually ran for the presidency in the December 2012 elections. Her election slogan recalled her father's, "Let's live well." Despite corruption allegations, she won the presidency over opposition contender Moon Jae-in with 51.6% of the vote. Like many other Korean presidents, Pak Gyunhee faced many political scandals throughout her tenure. A year after election in 2013, one of her spokesmen faced allegations of misconduct. He was fired while she was visiting the United States. Then, in 2014, an incredible tragedy. A ferry named the Sewol sank on its way to the island of Jeju, killing 304 people. This includes 250 students from Danwon High School in the lower middle class region of Ansan. The ferry was already old, 18 years when it was purchased from Japan. It was then modified from a cargo ship to a passenger ship, changing its center of gravity and making it more susceptible to accidents. And before it set off on its fateful trip, it had been overloaded. Here, the regulators failed to exercise proper oversight, with private operators authorized to self-regulate. The government's response to the accident was also criticized. The Korean Coast Guard botched the response, and initial news reports claimed that everyone had been rescued. It was a mess, and the activists continued protesting, refusing to go away. And then in 2015, the South Korean government mishandled a serious outbreak of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. This virus, sometimes called camel virus because it comes from camels, is a cousin of our good friend from 2019. Unlike that other one, This virus has a pretty high mortality rate, but is relatively difficult to spread from person to person. A 68-year-old returning from Saudi Arabia sought medical help and was diagnosed with MERS. 186 people subsequently caught it, resulting in 38 deaths. Over 10,000 were quarantined. The government misjudged the camel virus's transmissibility and neglected to properly communicate with the public about their efforts. Rumors flew, resulting in a fair amount of panic. Sounds familiar. These were terrible scandals, and they had some effect on her personal approval ratings. Her overall approval rating in December 2015 hovered at slightly over 40%, like 43% depending on whichever poll you believed. This was about Donald Trump levels, taking into account the same point in their presidencies. But not bad by South Korean standards. Current lame duck President Moon Jae-in is right now hovering at the 30% range, and even that is considered high. Like with Trump, Park's approval ratings had a floor, her traditional stronghold in South Korea's elder population. Consistently over 60% of people 60 years or older approved of her performance, and that number hit 77% near year's end. And as we all know, old people vote. Second, South Korea's electoral system, first adopted during the Pak Gyunhee days and then modified in 1990, is explicitly designed to favor ruling parties in its National Assembly, generally conservatives. For instance, in 1985, the ruling conservative DJP won just 32.5% of the popular vote, but still received over half of the 276 seats. Over the 26 years since 1990, the right-wing coalition won all but one of the 6 general elections. Thus, the scandals had little effect on her party's electoral results. Leading up to the April 2016 general elections, her party, the Saenuri Party, had won every by-election in the previous 4 years. They even played extremely well in the June 2014 local elections, winning 8 of the 17 open elections. Coming just 2 months after the Sewol ferry disaster, this was a strong showing, and people expected the same thing to happen with the April 2016 elections as well. What actually happened surprised a lot of political observers. Park's party lost 30 seats, from 152 to 122. Not only did the party lose its majority in the assembly, it also lost its status as the largest party. The largest party would be the opposition Democratic Party, with 123 seats. Needless to say, this was unexpected. The reason this happened was the sudden rise of a credible third party in Korean politics, occupying the center. An Cho-soo had made good in business, founding the antivirus software company Anlab in 1995. It became Korea's largest computer security company. After a brief stint in academia, he entered Korean politics in 2011 as an independent. In 2016, he established the People's Party, taking with him a few members of the left wing. Despite this, he attracted voters from both the left and right wing, winning 38 seats, well above the 20-seat threshold. It would be the first time a third party entered the National Assembly since 1996. And for the first time, it signaled a break in the regionalism that ruled Korean politics for so long. It shook Park's power base and left her an early lame duck. The Park administration up until now had done a good job of keeping a lid on bad press from the media. Then in August 2016, the right-leaning Chosan Ilbo newspaper published a few stories about corruption amongst high-ranking presidential aides. For instance, one aide, Woo Byung-woo, his mother-in-law sold over $100 million of real estate to a large company at above-market prices. Another story by sister TV network TV Chosun detailed how 2 foundations led by Choi SoonSil, daughter of shaman Choi Taemin, received tens of millions of dollars from chaebol like Samsung. It was one of the first real signs of the daughter's influence in the government. The Park administration quickly shut these stories down, and the general public sort of shrugged. High-level Korean politics is rife with corruption. The administration evaded another scandal a year earlier with little harm, so just another day in the office, so to speak. Chosun quieted down, but another paper picked up the mantle. The left-leaning Hankyoreh published a series of stories, soon coming to focus on Choi SoonSil and her daughter Chung Yu-ra. Chung Yu-ra attended a private women's college in Seoul, Ewha University. There, one of her classmates complained to the paper that she was passing her courses with high marks without attending class. In September 27, 2016, the paper published a story titled Choi SoonSil Changed Her Daughter's Academic Advisor. It detailed how Choi paid Ewa's president an overnight visit and had an academic advisor quickly dismissed. More stories came out. Chung turned out to be the very picture of privilege. She only attended 17 days of her last year at high school and supplied fake documents to graduate. She entered university with an equestrian scholarship, but the school bent the rules on sports athletes so to admit her. Several professors supplied her with the answers to their tests. They ordered their assistants to write and do projects for her, so on. And most flagrantly, she posted on Facebook, "Blame your own parents if you don't have ability. Money is also capability." This series of seemingly mundane stories blew up. They especially resonated with younger Koreans who often find themselves grinding to succeed in a brutal competitive society. Nobody likes a spoiled brat with a silver spoon. Another company picked up the chain. JTBC was a struggling news channel subsidiary of a larger media company. That company had once been an affiliate of Samsung, the chaebol. Ordinarily, that would have squelched any chance of breaking a news story like what was to come, but Samsung was in the midst of a transition from father to son, and the son was widely rumored to prefer the core businesses. The Samsung sugar daddy was closing his pockets, so JTBC had to make money. Company leadership didn't care what stories the network ran or who it pissed off, so long as the ratings were good. On October 24th, the network delivered when it acquired a tablet PC previously owned by Choi. In it, they found selfies confirming its owner and, most notably, top-secret drafts of presidential speeches, including one from a recent trip to Dresden, detailing thoughts on Korean reunification. It confirmed that Choi SoonSil, a woman with no formal credentials and barely a high school education, was meddling in state affairs, holding meetings with presidential aides, and pushing chaebol to give her money. The day after the news broke, Park gave a public speech with an explanation of Choi's involvement. It would be the first of 3. When you apologize, you want to do it quickly, specifically, and sincerely. Do it right and everyone can move on. The first speech took 1 minute 49 seconds. It gave a surface-level overview of Choi's involvement in policy. She did not say anything about the corruption, and it felt pretty indifferent. Park did not know that this was her chance to turn the tide. Her speech enraged the people. Her approval rating crashed to 14% and kicked off the first of many candlelight vigils in Korea's cities. Large-scale rallies in downtown Seoul with tens of thousands of people. Park waited a few days until her second apology on November 4th. This one lasted for 9 minutes. In it, she repeated her assertions about her relationship to Choi and sought public understanding. She also explained her unwillingness to step down. The second apology was a little better, but not by much. When it rains, it pours. By now, the news agencies were reporting scandals and scathing headlines each day. So, the mass vigils continued. On November 12th, 1 million people attended a rally in Seoul. By this point, her approval rating hit 5%. By now, even her die-hard supporters, the 60-plus cohorts, abandoned her. Her third national apology took place on November 29th, and in it, she discussed resigning. However, she explained that she wanted to have negotiations with the opposition parties before stepping down. People believed that this was a delaying tactic. The protests continued, and the politicians began talking about impeachment. As Americans might know, impeaching a president is extremely difficult. 1 million protesters out on the streets means nothing if there's a small handful of the right people on your side. However, Park's party, the Saenuri Party, could not maintain its party discipline. Like as I said earlier, they revolved around personalities and regions. When she refused to step down to save her own party, discipline fell apart. In the end, 234 MPs out of 300 voted in favor of impeachment. This includes 62 members of her own party. A sizable faction of the conservatives had broken off the first major conservative split in Korea's history. The South Korean Constitutional Court has 3 months to review the impeachment charge. They unanimously voted that due diligence was followed and upheld the charge. All the judges had been appointed by conservative presidents. The fallout from the Park impeachment was pretty massive. In 2018, Choi SoonSil was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Various members of Park's administration were also jailed, including her former health minister, spy chief, and chief of staff. In August 2018, Samsung head Jae Lee was also sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he was eventually released in August 2021 on parole due to national interest. I guess $11 billion in running the country's biggest company kinda matters. On the other hand, the three press publications that broke the Choi scandal, the Hankyoreh, JTBC, and TV Chosun, all received the Korea Journalism Award for their work. The scandal ended 2 decades of unified conservative factionalism. The next presidential elections are scheduled for March 2022, and it hints at a new era of multi-party politics in South Korea's coming years. Park herself was sentenced to 20 years in prison and fined $17 million, found guilty of abuse of power and coercion. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, it seems, and her supporters have started to advocate for a pardon. Korean politics is pretty wild, isn't it? Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, check out the newsletter, or follow the Twitter. Want to send me an email? Drop me a line at john@asianometry.com. I love reading your emails. Introduce yourself, suggest a topic, or more. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.